Hey everyone, I just wanted to share with you really quickly a story of two teachers because I think that what I learned from this story could have a profound impact on your life or the lives of someone that you know and love. So I had two teachers. This is a completely true story. One of them they both helped me a lot, but in both different ways. Recently, I sent one of them a message, and just as some background, I'm a person who does not like small talk. I think it's very annoying and fake. And with my close friends, we usually just send messages without having to introduce each other or ask how we're doing or anything. We just send messages and everything is fine. Well, I sent one of my teachers an article that I thought we both could discuss, and that he had similar views to me on a subject. So I sent him a message after not responding or not talking to him in some time. I said, hey, what do you think of this and the article? Then he responded with some weird, very, very dismal message. And then I said, well, that's not what I want to hear. Like, what do you think of this? Or something like that. And the way the conversation evolved is that he thought that I was abusing him by not sending him a greeting and telling him why I'm sending him this article. And he thought that when I said, that's not what I want to hear, it meant that I wanted him to say something that I wanted to hear. That's not how I was reading it. I was reading it as, wow, he was saying something about the world ending. I'm like, wow, that's not what I want to hear. As in, I don't want to hear like the world ending. That's bad news for everyone, right? But it doesn't mean that I wanted him to say something different. I was going off with what he said. The conversation was really awful. He basically told me that, this is how I expect to be spoken to. Okay, that's fine. And I said, that's cool. Next time I'll do that, or I'll start doing that right now. Now that we're giving each other feedback, here's how I would like to be spoken to. Then he said, you have no right to tell me how you want to be spoken to because you abused me by just sending me something, without a greeting. It was very selfish to me. That's what he said. It's very interesting. And he's like, you didn't care about what I wanted. All you wanted to do was, what you wanted to get out of the conversation. But actually, that was not true because I couldn't care less about the article. I shared something for him as kind of firewood for his teachings, his commentary, because he normally teaches about those types of topics. And I thought we could have a back and forth discussion, because that's usually what happens when you reach out to someone, right? You want to have a conversation. Sometimes you want to reach out and share your story or your feelings and you just want someone to listen to you, sure. But that wasn't the type of conversation I wanted to have. I really wanted to give him this firewood, for his talks in the future. But he came back at me saying I was selfish, abusive towards him, and then he abused me. He couldn't see that he was abusing me and that he was being selfish, because although he told me how he wanted me to speak to him, he couldn't tolerate how I wanted to draw boundaries to myself. He wouldn't even allow me to draw boundaries. And that raised a red flag. And I thought, okay, this is weird. Nobody has ever responded to me like this before. I took a day to think about it. And then I thought, maybe I outgrew this guy. So I might as well just cut him out of my life. He's not a good friend anymore. He's not going to be my friend anymore. He helped me a lot in the past, and I acknowledge that. And he probably gave me some truths that I can think about, but his delivery was not appropriate. And it's not always about what you do. It's also about how you do it. Interestingly enough, I encountered another teacher that taught me a lot of things, and he put his latest podcast, and I'm going to link it down below. It's very, very insightful. How he says a woman called him and started telling him about her life and talking about him and him and him. He found it annoying at first, but then he started to question himself. And then he thought, maybe I'm not comfortable sharing my life, and that's why I felt annoyed by it. And so he used that as a teaching experience for him. And that's how I was taught. I was always told that if something weird happens to you, look inside yourself too. Like, what can I learn from this? This is also what Jesus said when he said, before you point out the splinter in your neighbor's eye, take out the log in yours. So, of course, I was looking into, hey, how is this first teacher's awful message relate to me? Of course, some of it can relate to me because everyone is selfish. Sometimes I can be selfish, but I also learned that he's not able to grow and learn. One of my beliefs is that you can learn from anybody, whether it's a janitor or a CEO. You can learn from everybody. Because he was not ready to learn from me, he wanted to always be the teacher, and he was trying to push me down, because I positioned myself more as an equal because I was contributing to something that, giving him firewood for something he could use in a later podcast. He couldn't handle that, and so he was trying to push me back down to, this is how I want you to be, and you're not allowed to tell me how I'm supposed to be. Contrasted by this teacher, this martial artist that I met. He is so inspiring. He looked into himself and said, what is this telling me about me? He looked into himself and he made a podcast out of it, and he even encouraged other people to be better by the things that he learned. I'm going to link that podcast below, but he said, if you have a story, you better say it. And however you're comfortable with telling it, do it in an even more invasive way. Like, I'm most comfortable writing. I'm not really comfortable with video too much. So that's why I'm writing this video, because of him. If I were to continue with the old teacher that I had, that I just cut off today, I wish him well. I'm sure he's good. He has a lot of great content, but since he's gotten, really famous, I think his ego is kind of grown a little big. But stay with the teachers that make your heart sing. Life is too short. This is something that Sensei Endo teaches as well. Life is too short. Tell your story, or else it'll disappear. I feel uncomfortable telling my story because I feel it's selfish, right? But I like to tell things that I learned that could help people instead. So maybe that's my version of a story, and I'm hoping that what I learned here could help you instead. The key takeaways from my story is, find the teachers that make your heart sing. Life is too short to be around people who are abusive, and there's a fine line between harsh teachings, brutal, honest teachings, and abuse. And the third thing is, just because somebody interprets something in a way doesn't mean it's reality. If someone interprets something as selfish, doesn't mean it's actually selfish. It could be altruistic. Like, for instance, when he thought I said, that's not what I want to hear, he thought I was selfishly and self-entitled, expecting him to say something that I wanted. No, that wasn't the case. I was just commenting on how sad that, the story, that the message that he told me sounded, basically. And no one wants to hear a sad story. Well, from my perspective, I never want to hear a sad story about everyone dying, right? Do you? Maybe some people do. And that's something I learned too. Just because I experience it as something I don't want to hear doesn't mean that you might want to hear a story about everyone dying. But I don't. But that didn't mean that I didn't want him to say that. And that didn't mean that I wanted him to say something different. What he said was exactly what I wanted, exactly what I want him to do, because I want him to be himself. But the story he told was sad. Not that I wanted to control what was coming out of his mouth. So he was projecting his own insecurities onto me. And then he blamed me for projecting onto him, which was crazy. So the fourth thing I learned is that sometimes you can be a mirror to people. And you can know whether you're a mirror to people or not when it feels like things are coming out of left field. Sometimes when somebody tells you a harsh truth, you could, if you think about it and be honest with yourself, you can understand that a part of it is true. That, maybe there's a part of my life that's like that. Sure, he told it in a really bitchy way, but, part of it is true. But when something comes at you from left field, like, what is this guy talking about? He's calling me abusive and all I'm doing is apologizing. You know, it could be him reflecting himself on you. So those are the lessons. Number one, keep the teachers that make your heart sing. Sensei Ando is one of them. Two, just because somebody perceives something one way doesn't mean it's the truth. So investigate intent. Intent is very, 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 very important in assessing someone's true motivations. And three, discern the difference between brutal honesty and abuse. And all the things I just said. So hopefully this helped a lot. Sensei Ando said, use what you learn and kick it up a notch. So this is me kicking it up a notch. This is me getting out of my comfort zone. And this is me also sharing with you how to find an appropriate teacher and who to keep in your life based on my life experiences. Of course, you do you. This was what helped me. I hope this helps you. Have a great Saturday.